Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. I am so thrilled after many, many months of trying to get a time together for this podcast interview to introduce you to Mark Savant. Mark used to wake up like many of us every Monday with dread. He ran an insurance agency. He was well paid, but like many of us, he said this isn't enough and changed his life. So Mark, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to dive into your story and some of the great new things and new ways to do industry today that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, super stoked. This is probably one of the most transformative times in the past 100 years. And I think talking about this new tech, these new ways of marketing and building business is going to be, I think, really valuable to the listeners today. Excited to get into it.
Awesome. Well, first, before we get there, let's talk about your background. How did you get into insurance? Were you always interested in finance and insurance? What drew you to that? Then now you do something completely different. So how was that transition? Lots of questions.
Yeah. So growing up, high school, college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Quite frankly, right? I was just like, go to college, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to buy a house and have a family, and the rest will be history. I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. So when I graduated from college, I had a business degree, management and marketing degree. I started going out looking for jobs, didn't really see anything that was really exciting to me. My father is a insurance agent. He had a successful agency, still does. And he said, hey, Mark, I need someone to help out with the day-to-day operations because I just want to play golf and enjoy life. And I said, okay, well, let me try it out. And it was a good job, made a lot of money. But about 5 years in, I was like, I just kind of recognized that this isn't for me. You know, it's not a very creative industry. The other thing that I had noticed, Anika, and I think this is something that everybody should be looking at when you think about what job industry, what business you want to get into, is where is the market going? Because when I had first started, all of the new insurance sales, we were doing property and casualty, so home, auto, life, all of the sales were starting with just what we're doing now, people talking to people. Yeah. But what I recognized over the course of the next 5 years was that we're actually getting a lot of business that's just coming in through the internet. People are going to insuranceme.com, buying a policy, and then that's it. We have to kind of manage it on the back end. And so I said, where do I fit into this equation? Yeah. Am I going to be the one actually making the sale, or am I going to be the one who just has to listen to angry customers because the claim is denied or their deductible is too high, right? And so I think that's a really important thing for everyone to be thinking about when you're looking at where am I going? Where's my business going? Where are the trends going? Do I serve an important role in this process? And so what I ended up deciding, and I'm just going to give you the short version here, what I ended up doing was trying all sorts of different businesses. I eventually launched a podcast because I found podcasting interesting. I was listening to a lot. They're very informative. They're cool. And I eventually launched my show, and people started actually paying me to help them with theirs. And that eventually brought me to where I'm at today, where I run a podcast agency and I help business owners launch shows. We handle all the day-to-day operations. We manage the social media, the website, the blog. We handle the YouTube, and basically leverage a podcast and turn a podcast into an entire digital media presence for businesses and brands.
Yeah, they are so powerful. I don't think people understand how powerful podcasting can be, but I also don't think people understand how much work goes into this.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of funny. 50 years ago, everybody wanted to be like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. Now you ask kids, oh, I want to be a YouTuber.
Right. A content creator.
Yeah. and I think there's a lot of value in that. I think it's really important. Your personal brand, the way that you show up online, is probably one of the greatest assets that you have. You know, to your point, it's a lot of work, although we'll probably get into ways that you can make it a lot less work, because all these tools, AI in particular, completely transforms the way that we can produce content. And I think over the next decade, it's going to completely transform the way that we actually consume content.
It's a huge topic and it's controversial in some ways. I know as a professor, we have a lot of discussions around how AI is going to change journalism, how it's going to change the way students turn in papers, how it can even change the way teachers teach, right? Because you can put in prompts and have whole lesson plans come out of it. So you started your podcast how many years ago?
So the After Hours Entrepreneur is about 3 years old. Before that, I was producing a fatherhood show. That's about 4.5 years ago. Okay. So I've been in podcasting about 4.5 years now, and it's just great. It brings me business. It allows me to connect, to network with awesome people like yourself. And yeah, the After Hours Entrepreneur has been a huge blessing.
Yeah, wonderful. So you got into podcasting, started doing it for other people, helping them put together their programs. What have been some of the lessons that you learned moving from one industry to this other industry that I imagine is very different?
Well, and I think I love that word different. What makes you different? And I think there's a lot of value in looking at what's working. The people that are in my industry, what are they doing that works? And then how can I emulate that? How can I quote unquote copy that? How can I do what they're doing? And I'll ask people that are in podcasting and content creation, so what makes you different? They'll say things like, well, I'm really entertaining, or I talk about really innovative stuff. I'm interesting. I have great guests. Spoiler alert, that's not different. That's mandatory. If you're not entertaining, ain't no one going to watch. If they don't walk away with anything valuable, they're not going to watch or listen. So I think what makes you different, I'll give you a little exercise that you can do. Whatever industry you're really passionate about, look at the top dogs. What are all the opinions that the top dogs in your industry have? How many of those opinions do you disagree with? How deep can you go on your disagreements? I was talking to Patrick Bet-David about this the other day. In a world where everyone's saying, oh yeah, I agree with that. Me too, me too, me too. What makes you different? Where's the debate come from? Because people like conflict. They like debate. We want to hear where, that's how great ideas are formed. So he was talking to this like Victoria's Secret model who's very famous. And she was thinking about getting into creating a show and a podcast. And he said, well, what do you think about this topic? She's like, oh yeah, I agree with that. What do you think about this topic? Yeah, no, that's true too. What about this? If you agree with everything, you're just more of the same.
Right.
And I think, when I look at content creation, really thinking about how can I go deep on topics? What topics do I disagree with? And how knowledgeable am I on that topic? I think is a really good way of standing out in what I would consider a crowded market.
For sure. You're just bringing back to last night. One of my classes is celebrity and the role of PR. And I try to take different slants on what that means, right? What does the word celebrity mean? So I brought in a documentary filmmaker who's a producer, director, and did a film. Took him 7-8 years to make it just because of lack of funding. He wasn't some big head honcho, so it was a struggle, but it was about the death of Michael Brown Jr. in Ferguson, Missouri. This is before the pandemic, before George Floyd, all of that stuff. But what was really great is that in his process of making this film, it wasn't one-sided. He spoke to all the different people in the community. He spoke to police officers and got different opinions of the situation that happened. He kept it really even keeled. And I love that because if we don't get to talk, people often, like you're saying, you either agree or if you disagree with somebody, you're not necessarily going to be open to having that kind of discussion. But having those discussions and learning from each other is what helps us grow as people and get better at what we do. That can be something big, philosophical, or it can be something small. But those are important things and important discussions. And that's why I love podcasting, because I get to meet such a big variety of people. I learn something from every guest that I have on. Doing marketing and PR off and on for way longer than I want to admit. But you don't have to agree with everything that somebody says. You don't have to think that they're the best guest, or, if you then become LinkedIn connected to them or Facebook or whatever, or Instagram, you don't have to agree with all of their philosophies, but you can still find that common point and have a great discussion and still appreciate each other.
And I think if you agree with everything that everyone says, like there's probably a problem. I don't want to say there's a problem with you, but there probably is, right? And we kind of talked about this a little bit beforehand. If you're looking for confirmation, if you're looking for love from everyone else, you're exposed. Like it has to come from in here. Your confidence has to come from inside you. If you're waiting for validation, if you're waiting for likes, if you're waiting for shares, and that's where your sense of self comes from, you're exposed. So I think it's important to develop your own ideas and to disagree with people. We could go into like the polarization and the algorithms on social media and the villainization of the left or the right and all that, but I think most people get that. What I think is important is, I can't remember who said this, but it's this idea of if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything. And so I think it's important that you stand for certain ideals, values, but also being open to change them. Keeping this on the branding and the PR side, there's this commonly held idea in the podcast world that you should never charge guests to come on your show. They're doing you a favor by coming on your show. In fact, you might even want to pay them to come on your show, which I've done, by the way. I pay people to come on my show. But I flipped that on its head because my show, After Hours Entrepreneur, I generate about $1,000 a month from guests that are paying to come on my program, right? And I put on a presentation at PodFest this past year, and people were nuts for it. People are making money now where they weren't before. I posted on my YouTube channel, Mark Savant Media, and people are like, wow, I can actually make money from guests. And so by taking what the industry standard is, what people say is the correct thing, by flipping it on its head, I've differentiated myself. Now I'm different. And since then, I've been invited to do speaking engagements. It's opened up new opportunities because I didn't toe the line with what everybody says is fact.
Yeah.
Take an alternative stance. Being different, I think, when it comes to content creation and personal branding is really, really important.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about that, because you were saying you're going through a slight rebrand, but you had a certain brand when you were working in insurance, and then you moved into this other field and you've had to brand yourself. Was there a transition? Were you still the same exact brand, but just switching industries?
Well, yes and no. And I think it's important that we don't confuse our audience. Right? If someone lands on your LinkedIn profile, they should know who you're for, what you do, and the problem you solve very, very quickly, like within 3 seconds. Mm-hmm. The worst message you can ever get is, I'd like your profile. What do you do? There's a problem there.
Yeah.
That's a huge, huge problem. So if someone lands on your profile and you're talking about, I do insurance and I'm in podcasting, I love AI and I love long walks on the beach, you might end up confusing people. Right. So, it's important, I think, that you can go deep and you're multifaceted. You have deep ideas and you can educated conversations on multiple topics. But it's also important from a personal branding standpoint that when someone finds you, they can very quickly and concisely and clearly determine, is this person for me? Can they solve the problem that I have? Mm-hmm. And if they can't figure that out quickly, you're going to be losing opportunities, period.
Yeah. Definitely. So let's talk about some of the tools that you use and that you've discovered, because this is something that we were talking a little bit about before we got into the actual interview. And I was like so excited. I had a radio show in Houston, and then it was like radio and Facebook Live. Then I moved back to Los Angeles, and the pandemic happened, and we tried doing a little bit of virtual shooting and stuff, and it was fine, but it wasn't the same, right? So then I moved into podcasting. And even in the few years that I've been in podcasting, like 3 years now, so much has changed with the technology we use. Like you said, finding the best practices from different people, figuring out what's going to work for you, not because it's what the industry says, but what really works for you and for your company and your brand. So talk through some of the ways that you help people discover, or that you help to figure out like what your podcast was going to be, what your brand was going to be, and what tools were going to best serve you and your audience.
Yeah. The world is fundamentally changed right now, and most people don't understand it yet. And I think the biggest transformation that we're seeing that people are sleeping on is AI, and how that changes the way that we create content, how that changes the way that we consume content. Right. And by the way, my show, After Hours Entrepreneur, has gone through several rebrands. We're going through a rebrand now as well. The reason for that is because the world has changed. My goal with the After Hours Entrepreneur is every time you listen to an episode, you walk away thinking, that's something that I can do to grow my business. That's something that I can do to make more money. And what I think a lot of people do, and I've made this mistake too, is I'll have someone on and we talk about affiliate marketing. Right. And, you create content, people click on the link in your bio and then they buy something off of Amazon. Sure. That works. That can work, but that's been around for 15 years.
Yeah.
How many channels are there on YouTube that talk about making money with affiliate marketing? There's a million of them. Do I care about what you're talking about? There's already hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of people already talking about it, right? Mm-hmm. So what I think about when it comes to content creation is like, what is new? What's different? And I talked about taking an alternative approach, but there's so many people talking about what worked 10 years ago because they're just saying, me too. I'm talking about this method of generating income. I'm talking about this way of changing the world. Yeah, but what's next? And I'll give you a perfect example. I'll give you something really practical, something y'all can take to the bank. You can try this today. Several years ago, let's say 2 or 3 years ago, I was looking at hiring someone to write blogs for my website. Mm-hmm. And I was quoted $600 for a weekly blog. Right? $600. And I was like, it's kind of a lot of money. I'm going to put it on the back burner for now. Well, there's this thing that's come out recently called ChatGPT. Probably you've heard about it. And I went into ChatGPT just this past week, and I've been doing some research. I have a big client that I'm looking at getting sponsors for. And I said, write me a 1,500 word article about why businesses should advertise on podcasts. Boom. It writes out the whole article. And I noticed that throughout the course of the article, it was notating different studies, different research, data points, websites. And I said, give me the references for all the data that you used. Gave me the references.
Amazing.
I was like, holy crap. Do you know how long it would have taken me to done that? Like, forget about it. And I said, okay, rewrite this whole thing, but make it more compelling. And it used better hooks. It used more data points, got the references, of course. And I said, okay, now give me 20 different potential titles for this. Gave that to me. Okay, now write me an outro. Cool. Okay, this is great. Now also write me a social media post that I can use to promote this. Also, write me an email that's compelling. It did everything. And it took me 20 minutes. Didn't take me $150. Took me 20 minutes to do this entire thing. posted up to the blog, and it's up there live at marksavantmedia.com right now.
And I'm going to tell you, I spent an entire, at least one full workday plus other hours writing an almost 5,000 word draft of an article this week, pulling all the research myself. And I was thinking there has to be a better way. And I haven't explored ChatGPT too much yet because I'm like many entrepreneurs, I'm busy doing everything, right? But now you're telling me clearly right here, yes, I need to download this and I need to use it.
Right. And again, that's just one example, tip of the iceberg type stuff that 99% of business owners don't know because they're still doing it the way that they learned 5-10 years ago. They're watching YouTube videos that are several years old. So they're doing it that way. And again, when I look at what makes me different, what makes Mark Savant Media different, what makes the After Hours Entrepreneur different is you don't have to go out and learn all this stuff. You come by, you listen to an episode, and you're going to walk away with simple, practical stuff that's going to be applicable. So you don't have to do all the research. You can walk away, Anika, after this episode, you could do the same thing I just explained, and then you have your blog like that.
Nice.
What would have typically taken me 30 minutes, 3 hours took me less than 30 minutes. This is like life-changing technology.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, again, personally, and I'm talking about my brand amplified. How can I amplify my brand? Is I want to shout this stuff from the rooftops because it's life-changing. And I think that if I can change someone's life by giving them one quick tip, one little thing, they're going to be like, wow, that was cool. I want to learn more. And they'll come back a second time. They'll learn more. They'll come back a third time and learn more. But if I was just coming in here and saying, oh, well, if you've got a podcast, you want to guest on other podcasts to grow and you want to repurpose your stuff for social media, like that's tired. That's boring. Everyone's already knows that. What's new? What's fresh? What's hot? And this is a really special time in human history where you can really find this stuff. It's everywhere.
Amazing. I use AI to transcribe when I have meetings via Zoom, when I am transcribing my podcast. Like there's so many AI tools, whether it's Capsho or Pod Squeeze or other ones that will spit out, here's your show notes. Here's a blog post. Here's a social media post. Here's some show titles that you can use. And it's amazing. And I feel like it's getting better and better. It's not perfect,
way
but
better.
It's getting better and better.
And, one of the cool things you can do in ChatGPT specifically is you can actually train the program to speak in your voice.
Ooh.
One of the common issues that people have with ChatGPT is like, this doesn't read very well. It sounds like a robot, right? And so what you can do is you can upload your transcripts from maybe podcast episodes that you've recorded, which are in your voice. I like to use the word baby a lot. Like, what's up, baby? For whatever reason, I like to use that word. And so you can train it to speak in that way, right? Who's someone else? Okay, Trump. Trump has a very unique way of speaking. Like it, hate it. He talks differently than most people. I am the greatest. I am amazing. I'm the best person to ever live. I'm better than everyone else ever. And he talks that way. And if you ask ChatGPT to write a story in the voice of Trump, it will do that. And it will be as egotistical as Trump can possibly be, right? So you can train it to speak in that way. Or if, for example, you ask ChatGPT to write it in Anika Jackson's voice, and you're like, I don't really like the way that it said. Don't ever do that again. Don't ever use the word baby again. Use the word friends instead. It will learn from you. And you can train it to speak in your voice. It's really mind-blowing.
Wow.
And here's the cool thing. It's only going to get better. It's only going to get more impactful. It's only going to be more and more intuitive.
So where is the line between letting AI tools do so much of this for us, which is obviously efficient, saves us time, saves us money, resources that we can then put back into our company, or we can take a little extra day off to be with our families or whatever it is. Where's the line between that and people, right? People working and people having jobs in these industries. Particularly, I teach students who are going into public relations or journalism. And I feel like this is a tool that they can use to write better pitches when they're pitching out clients, to write articles for their clients, ghostwriting, a lot of things like that. But there still needs to be a little bit of the human element. I guess that's what I don't know that there's an answer yet, right? Because it's changing so fast in real time.
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question, Anika, is how does this change the way that we communicate? Like, are people actually going to read blogs if it's not written by the creator, by the blog writer themselves? Why would I read a book if I know it's written by AI? I'll give you another example. I don't know if you know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, but I love me some Gary. He's kind of the Pied Piper of entrepreneurship, social media. And he wrote the other day on Facebook, he wrote a very long post about something like 10 ways that businesses can use AI. It was very long. Gary's posts normally are very short. They're like Twitter style posts. They're like 158 characters. This was a long post. I immediately recognized, I said, I read about 2 paragraphs. This is all AI generated. It's completely AI generated. I know it is. And so I kind of tuned it out. I made a post like, Gary, this is 100% AI. It's not you. Although, again, you can train the AI to speak like you and talk like you. But I knew it. So I kind of wonder, like, is the way that we read forever changed now? How does that look? And the answer is I don't know. I do think that what we're doing now in creating video content, recording podcasts is a really powerful way of separating yourself because people can actually hear you. They see you, maybe even touch and feel you if it's in real life, or maybe it's in the metaverse and it's a more visceral experience. But I think that changes the way that we interact. Although I'm going to give you another example. I'm going to go a layer deeper here. A few weeks ago, I recorded a podcast that is entirely AI generated. So ChatGPT wrote the title. It wrote the description of the podcast. It wrote the entire script for the podcast.
Wow.
I took that script, I uploaded it into an AI software called 11 Labs, and I've trained 11 Lab to understand my voice.
Wow.
So it can replicate my voice. It sounds like me.
Wow.
The entire episode is all AI. So the way that it's kind of formulated, and I hate to spoil the first 3 minutes of the episode is all AI. It's no mark. It's all robot. And then I spend the next 5 minutes kind of explaining this process of how I did it. I said, oh, by the way, that wasn't me. That was a robot. Now it's me. And the amount of emails I got was shocking. I got dozens of emails from people that said, holy crap, Mark, I thought that was you the whole time. This is crazy. And people don't recognize that this has happened. I'm sorry, I could go so long on this, but I'll give you one more example.
Please.
I'll give you one more example. That's kind of like the good or the interesting. I'll give you a bad or the scary example. I watched a video clip of Biden the other day. He was giving a talk, a speech, which presidents do sometimes.
Yeah.
And as he turns around, he's walking off stage. He was caught on a hot mic, quote unquote, saying something like, can you believe those idiots bought that load of crap? It turns out that wasn't actually Biden who said that. That was an AI generated deepfake of Biden saying that.
Wow.
So the lines between what's real and what's fake is being completely blurred. Where does it stop? Where does it start? And this is going to be a really crazy election cycle where you're not going to know what's real. And quite frankly, just because you read something for the first time, there could be a retraction, or there could be a news story, or there could be another clip that says, hey, that clip that came out, that wasn't actually real. That Biden didn't actually say that. But I heard Biden say that. I didn't hear the retraction. So I think that it actually happened. And I go around telling all my friends and family, did you hear what Biden said? You hear what Biden said? When it didn't really happen. So it's kind of a weird time. And how do we show what's real and what's not? How do we leverage these tools for good and not for bad? How do we leverage these tools to expand our voice rather than dilute the internet with a bunch of bullcrap? These are questions I think that are really important.
I agree with you. That example, for instance, it's going to make some people go even further, right? To, oh yeah, we don't like Biden because this is how he really feels about the American people and blah, blah, blah. And other people will go, no, we know that's not Biden because that's not how he speaks. Like, it does not sound natural. Like, those are not words that would come out of his mouth because we've never seen him. It doesn't seem to be his personality.
Yeah, although I would say that most politicians are just actors and they're completely different behind the scenes. But you're right. It's going to completely cement people's, people have their own ideals.
Right.
And when you hear stuff like that, it's going to cement your ideal even more. That to me is a very scary thing. The abuse and the manipulation of the public using this technology. I'm more focused on how can we use this technology to make more money and to be more competitive in the market. Yeah. I think it was Elon and a bunch of other tech entrepreneurs released this petition to say, hey, we need to stop AI. It's too fast. It's kind of scary. But you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
And they're the ones who invested in it in the first place. And then they got scared of how far it's going to go, right? It makes me think of like all the science fiction movies that we grew up with, or like even the book Fahrenheit 451, where you come home and you interact with the video walls that are around you. And that's basically like an AI world. I mean, it's like taking the VR world into the real world in some ways.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's really kind of wild. And the flip side, though, just taking a step back and not being black-pilled here, but just kind of saying like, okay, what's the good here? And this is such a special time in human history. Over the course of humanity, there's always been innovation. Like the agricultural age and the industrial revolution and the automobile. Like, this stuff scared a lot of people.
Yeah,
there were a lot of people with a horse and buggy who said, oh, crap, there's cars now. I'm finished.
Right.
But what I would hope that all of your listeners can take away from this is, okay, this is happening. How can I leverage this technology to do good in the world? How can I leverage this technology to improve the life of my family?
Yeah.
How can I leverage this technology to create jobs rather than eliminate jobs? Because please believe, millions of jobs are going to become obsolete over the next 5 years, period. But just like we've seen in human history, a lot of jobs are taken away, but a lot of new jobs are created.
Yeah. I think even I read Walmart is going to have almost completely automated systems, but they still want to have the human factor of people overseeing those systems. So there'll be, like you said, that shift in what we need for the workforce and the skills that people need. But it's an exciting time too, because there are endless possibilities.
Yeah. And that stat here is Walmart estimates that within 3 years, 63% of their stores will be fully automated.
Wow.
3 years. And guess what? If Walmart's doing it, Target's going to do it. I don't even know if Kmart's still around. That shows my age a little bit. But, grocery stores.
I'm a little older than you, so yeah.
I think, and this is already a thing. I think that's Amazon stores, maybe in Cali where you're at, where you don't even need, there's no checkout. You just walk in, you pick up your banana and you walk out. Yeah. And you're automatically charged. That's it. Yeah. So, which is kind of a scary thing because I'm not sure on this exact data point, but I think that retail employs tens of millions of people. Mm-hmm. So what do you do if you're in a retail job and all of a sudden you're replaced by a computer? And it's easy to say like, well, pick yourself up by the bootstraps and go get a better job. And that's hard if you're a 60-year-old woman. Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah.
But that's why I think it's up to us to find new jobs in new ways. I'm not a fan of just everybody gives the government more money and the government just pays these people to do things. I don't love that. I love the idea of how can I empower this person to come along with this revolution, with the technological revolution? How can they be a part of it and contribute in a meaningful way? I think that's what's interesting. And if I could sum that up in 2 words, it's prompt engineering.
Oh, I like that. I've not heard that phrase.
Yeah. Prompt engineering, I think, becomes one of the most important skills to learn over the next 5 years. And what I mean by prompt engineering, that's learning the skills. What do I need to ask the software to do? What were the words I need to give to AI to get the best response back? If you are good at prompt engineering, you are going to be irreplaceable.
Wow. Whole new career. I love it. Gosh, I feel like time has just really flown because I still have so many questions to unpack with you.
I was big into NFTs. I'm big into crypto, blockchain. I love that stuff. But AI, that stuff is very kind of like, I think fantastical in a lot of ways. It's not as tangible as AI, write me a blog article that helps my SEO, that's very valuable, that's full of resources and references. That's something that you can take to the bank today and see a really good return on. So this is the type of stuff that I'm really excited to examine in more detail on my podcast, After Hours Entrepreneur. It's the stuff that I'm going to be just really pushing out because I've seen the impact it's had on my podcast agency. And we're like a tip top of the iceberg. It goes way deeper, way deeper.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it's not too late. AI has been around for a lot longer than we even realize. It's been really in the zeitgeist for 6 to 8, 10 months, but you haven't missed out on the AI opportunity and using it as a really great tool. I talk a lot about my friend Ajay's company, Simplified. It is a social media platform, right? But he uses AI. So you can go in, you can create all your posts, you can upload images or you can have AI generated images. It creates video, blog posts, captions, presentations, everything in one system. So it replaces the need to pay for Canva and Acrobat and, After Effects Pro, whatever, like all the different things that you might have used in the past. Like you said, 5, 10, 15 years ago, having to pay for all these different systems. Instead, you can do everything in one system. And I think that's part of what we're talking about too. There's going to be more consolidation, but in a net positive way for business owners.
100%. And just as an example, just in the past month and a half, I've had about a dozen meetings with AI developers. This is the next quote unquote Silicon Valley. This is really transformative stuff. So learning it and getting your hands dirty and playing with it now is going to really help you to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. If you're good with this stuff, if you understand it, you're going to be unstoppable. It's not a question in my mind because I've already seen it play out in my business. Very transformative.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, I've been wanting to use it. I just haven't made the time, but now I'm just going to have to make the time.
Yeah. Again, it's funny, you're kind of investing in yourself. It does take a little bit of time, but even if you just use that quick example that I gave you about writing a blog, in a half hour, you could have an amazing blog written up. And I talked about rebranding myself just after seeing it in action and after applying it and having conversations with people just like you and Nico who are like, yeah, AI's there. I'm just not exactly sure. I don't have the time to kind of take this. Here's a 5-minute podcast episode. Take this, try it, and you'll be shocked at the results.
Wow.
Right. And again, we're only at the tip of the iceberg. I'm very excited about what it's going to do for people over the coming decade.
Amazing. Well, Mark, I am going to ask you right now to come back on. So when we finish recording, I want to figure out a time for us to come back on and unpack some of the other things that we didn't get to, such as the other parts of Web3, NFTs, metaverse, blockchain. There's so much scary stuff out there. People don't know whether to invest in it. Either people are early adapters or they're like, oh, see, that's not, like you said, new technology, that fear factor of, is this going to last? Is it going to be something I want to invest in? And I think to the point of AI, NFTs in the metaverse and blockchain and all of the cryptocurrency, none of that's going away. You get with the times. You got to figure out now how to use it so that you can get in the door. It's not too late, right? We're still in the very early days and it's only going to get better. But if you don't start using that as part of your strategy now, whether it's an investment strategy, I know companies that sell NFTs to start their businesses as an investment, who take cryptocurrency as a form of payment. There's so much more. And then I want to talk about paid communities, more outsourcing, good habits, all the other things that everybody needs to understand. And especially you as a multiple time entrepreneur in different businesses can help, really guide that. And with that, I'm going to have you back on. We already know that, but I'd love to see, do you have a quote, a mantra, words of wisdom that you live by that you'd like to share with us?
I think that the best mantra would be just be a little bit better than yesterday.
Nice.
Just be a little bit better. Bill Gates said we overestimate what we can accomplish in 1 year, but we underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So if you just focus on just being a little bit better than yesterday, the momentum builds. And continuously be a little bit better than yesterday. Your growth is not linear, it's exponential.
Beautiful. And what is the easiest way for people to reach you? Is your social media the same as your website? Is it different?
Yep. You can find Mark Savant Media all over the web. And if you enjoyed this episode, shoot me an email, mark@marksavantmedia.com. mark@marksavantmedia.com. I'd love to hear from you. What questions do you have? What feedback do you have? I'm here to help you grow and leverage these tools to be incredibly successful.
Yeah. And learn more about how to use podcasting for your business. So there's going to be a lot of resources at Mark Savant Media. So Mark, thank you so much. And thank you to our audience for listening to another episode of Your Brand Amplified. I'll be back again with another amazing guest expert in a few days. And until then, have a fantastic day. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.